Once upon a time, there lived 3 piglets with their mother in a small house. It was time for them to leave their home and learn to live on their own. Their mother called the 3 piglets next to her. My dear children, the time has come for you to go out into the world. Go and start your new lives. But don't ever forget, whatever you do in this world, do the best you can. This is the only and the best way to stay alive. A little sad with a bit of excitement, the 3 little piglets said their goodbyes to their mummy and were on their way. After a while, they found some piece of land where they could build their own home. The youngest piglet was determined to build his home with straw. He thought this was the easiest and the fastest way to build a home. That way, he had heaps of time to play. The youngest of them all finished his house in one day. He yelled out to the other piglets, "Hey you guys, I'm already finished!" The eldest piglet had a look at the house.
Okay, but this house doesn't look steady at all. How will we protect ourselves from the wolf?
The youngest piglet didn't take any notice of his brother.
Don't worry, nothing will happen.
Okay, don't say I didn't warn you.
The middle piglet decided to make his house out of wood. From the branches he had collected in the woods, he decided to build a little cubby house. His house took exactly 3 days to finish. This house was a bit more steady than the one with straw. The eldest piglet walked over towards him.
My dear brother, you've done a great job, but this doesn't look safe at all. Is this house going to protect us from the wolf?
The middle piglet answered,
Don't worry, this house is very safe.
Okay, don't say I didn't warn you.
While the 2 little piglets were having a great time in their newly built homes, the eldest of them all was constantly working because he was building a home from bricks and rocks. The other piglets thought that his effort was useless. All they did was play around and kill time.
Why would you bother with this when you can quickly finish like we have? How scared is he?
The eldest piglet didn't bother listening to them. He worked for 1 whole week and managed to finish his house made out of bricks and rocks. A day later, a hungry wolf arrived near their home. He first stood in front of the house made of straw. The little piglet was resting in his house made of straw. The wolf knocked on the door.
Open the door and let me in. If you don't, I'll huff and puff and blow your house in.
You can't do anything to me. My house is steady enough.
And so the wolf huffed and puffed, and he blew his house in. But with great effort, the little piglet managed to get away. And off he ran over to his brother's house made from tree branches. He knocked on the door, and when the middle piglet opened the door, the little piglet threw himself inside the house.
Hey, close the door. The wolf can come in here. Don't worry, he can't do anything to us in this house.
After a while, the wolf came by the second piglet's wooden house and yelled inside.
Open the door and let me in. If you don't, I'll huff and puff and blow your house in.
You can't blow my house in.
And so the wolf huffed and puffed, and he blew his house in and brought it down. Both piglets ran to the third piglet's house and barely got away from the wolf.
Brother, the wolf is going this way. What are we going to do?
The oldest piglet answered, very sure of himself.
Don't worry, the wolf cannot come in this house.
A little later, the starving wolf came by the third piglet's house of bricks and stone and yelled to the 3 piglets.
Open the door and let me in. If you don't, I'll huff and puff and blow your house in.
Don't you even try, you bad wolf! You cannot come in this house!
The wolf got very angry. He huffed and puffed, but nothing happened. He could not bring his house down. He tried and tried, but he couldn't move one single brick. Finally, being exhausted, the wolf decided to try another way to go in. He saw the chimney up on the roof and started to climb. Realizing that the wolf was going to climb up on the roof and come down the chimney, the piglet quickly lit up the fireplace right under the chimney and put a big bucket of water on the wood. The wolf barely climbed up the chimney and threw himself in and went straight into the boiling bucket.
Help! Help! I'm burning! Save me! Help!
Finally, being free from the wolf, the piglets hugged each other with joy. The 3 piglets went to their mother's house the next day to tell her all that had happened. The youngest one came next to his mother.
You were right, Mummy! Whatever we did in this world, we have done it to our best. If you really work for something, it will be a success.
From that day on, the 2 piglets were never lazy. They worked hard like their big brother and lived a happy and safe life. Once upon a time, there lived a little girl. This girl wore a Red Riding Hood at all times. That's why everybody used to call her Little Red Riding Hood. Darling! Yes, Mummy? You know your grandmother is ill. Would you take her the cookies I baked and the fresh herbs I picked from the woods? Of course, Mummy, I will. The little girl, with her Red Riding Hood as always, started her journey to her grandmother's house. Do not leave the road in the bunny forest, sweetheart, said her mother as she was leaving. Little Red Riding Hood started walking in the forest while joyously singing songs. I wonder why they call it the bunny forest. I haven't seen any bunnies along the way. Little Red Riding Hood came to a road filled with flowers. There were all kinds of colored flowers. I should pick some flowers for my grandmother. She'll be very pleased. While Little Red Riding Hood was picking the flowers, she did not realize that she was drifting away from her path. At that moment, she heard a sound coming from the bushes. Suddenly, a big bad wolf approached in front of her. Little Red Riding Hood was so scared that when she saw the wolf right in front of her eyes, she dropped the basket that she was carrying. The wolf jumped closer to her and collected the cookies she had dropped from the basket and gave them back to Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood was amazed by this unexpected gesture from the wolf. Thank you.
Where are you heading, little girl?
To my grandmother's house, the yellow house at the end of this forest. She is not feeling well, so I'm bringing her cookies and healthy herbs.
Really?
By the way, you can call me Little Red Riding Hood like everybody else does.
I'll head on first and let your grandmother know that you're on your way so that you can continue picking up your beautiful flowers.
Right at that moment, he heard a gunshot of an approaching hunter's rifle and ran away as fast as he could. Little Red Riding Hood looked around for a moment and started crying, realizing that she was lost. Hearing her crying, the hunter approached and came next to her.
What are you doing alone here, little girl? It's very dangerous around here. I'm looking for a big bad wolf whom I've been hunting for a very long time.
Little Red Riding Hood was very ashamed because she had not listened to her mother and left the road in the bunny forest. So she could not tell the hunter that she had met the wolf.
Well, I was bringing cookies to my ill grandmother living at the end of the forest and I got lost.
Let me bring you to your grandma's home then.
They started to walk together, and right then the wolf took a shortcut and quickly made it to the grandmother's house. He knocked on the door. The grandmother yelled from inside,
Who is it?
the wolf changing his voice.
It's me, Grandma, Little Red Riding Hood. I brought you cookies and fresh herbs from the woods.
The door is open, my dear. You can come in.
The wolf smirked and stormed in through the open door. When a while later, Little Red Riding Hood and the hunter arrived at the grandmother's house.
Go, little girl. Go next to your grandmother as soon as possible.
The hunter went back on his way. Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. Her grandmother yelled from inside,
Who is it?
It's me, Grandma, Little Red Riding Hood.
The door is open, my darling. You can come in.
Little Red Riding Hood hesitated for a moment, because the sound she heard did sound a little different than her grandmother. She then remembered that her grandmother was ill.
Well, Grandmother probably sounds like that because she is ill.
Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and went in. The wolf, dressed in grandmother's clothing, with her nightcap and her glasses, was lying in the bed. He also closed the drapes so that it became dark inside, and Little Red Riding Hood could not recognize him.
I thank you, darling, for all your trouble getting all the way here to bring me food. Come next to me so I can give you a hug. Come, my darling. Come closer.
Little Red Riding Hood left the basket on the floor, but she did not get too close to the bed, because her grandma looked different.
Why are your arms so long, Grandma?
So that I can hug you better.
Why are your ears so big?
So that I can hear you better.
But why are your eyes so huge?
So that I can see you better.
Why are your teeth so sharp, Grandmother?
So that I can eat you better.
The wolf jumped out of the bed and charged at the Little Red Riding Hood. At that moment, Little Red Riding Hood realized that it wasn't her grandmother lying in the bed, but instead the big bad wolf she had ran into along the way.
Help me!
The hunter heard Little Red Riding Hood scream
Help! Help me!
and ran straight to the house, stormed into the open door and caught the wolf immediately.
I finally got you, big bad wolf. Now you're in my hands.
The hunter cut the wolf's belly and rescued the grandmother.
Thank you for saving us, Mr. Hunter.
You're welcome. But promise me, little girl, that you will never forget what your mother asks of you.
With great appetite, Grandmother ate all the cookies Little Red Riding Hood had brought for her, boiled the healthy herbs to make a cup of tea, and instantly got well. Little Red Riding Hood promised her grandmother that she will never ever fall into the words of a bad wolf again. Little Red Riding Hood was walking in the forest once again, singing along merrily, as she ran into the same wolf again. The wolf was punished by the hunter to clean the forest. And he was very ashamed about what he did when he saw the Little Red Riding Hood. The bunny forest became full of joy, bunnies and flowers like it was once before.